1:30. Martha's here. Let's get started.
Let's get started. Okay.
All right, commissioners, your first policy session today is Construction Career Pathways Project, or C2P2 update. This will be led by our county administration staff, Tracy Moreland, and we have several guests as well. So I'll ask Tracy to please introduce our guests and then go ahead when you're ready.
Unmute. Thank you, Gary. Hope everyone can hear me. Well, good afternoon, commissioners. Tracy Moreland from County Administration here today to help kick off the C2P2 policy session. And so today we have, you all know Metro Councilor Christine Lewis is here, and she wanted to say a brief word about the program. Raahi, Reddy, who is Metro's Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Director, and Tiffany Thompson, who is the C2P2 Project Manager. They'll present a PowerPoint. And also joining us is Bridget Dacey, who you all know is Clackamas Workforce Partnership Executive Director. Just a little refresh for your memory, a bit about C2P2. It's the Construction Careers Pathways Project, a regional partnership intended for agencies to develop strategies for recruiting and retaining women and people of color in the construction trade. The board attended a presentation jointly with the Clackamas Workforce Partnership Board on March 12th, where you were asked to consider holding a formal policy session and signing on to C2P2, but that was shortly before the closures and health and safety priorities related to COVID happened. But still, staff have been working with Metro and other partners to learn as much as possible to keep this moving forward. And so today, after the PowerPoint, Metro staff will help answer questions, and we'll have a discussion about what staff's recommending, which is develop a plan for Clackamas County. So I'll hand this over to Raahi and Tiffany to get their PowerPoint up and introduce Councilor Lewis.
I'll just go ahead and be brief with my remarks. My youngest family member has opinions, but I'm here today to say that I'm encouraged by Clackamas County's work continuing on in doing this. We absolutely have an opportunity to include Clackamas in some regional diversity of good construction jobs, family wage jobs that benefit the recovery of this region. I am also I'm really distracted right now, but I'm also just here to answer any questions you might have, and I'll pass it over to staff to explain the program to you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Commissioner.
We've all been there.
My name is Raahi Reddy, and I'm the Director of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion at Metro. And we're really so grateful for staff and for your leadership as commissioners to invite us here today to do this presentation and to answer any questions. So I thought we'd just get started, and Tiffany has our slides up, and we can just go to slide 2. So our efforts here around construction careers really are just an opportunity to capture the numerous opportunities we have in publicly funded projects to create and to advance racial equity, creating construction careers, pathways, good construction career pathways for people of color and women. And our intention with this project was to both increase the construction career opportunities for people of color and women, help meet the regional demand for skilled construction workforce. As you know, there's incredible shortages, utilize the collective strengths of all of our public agencies to coordinate and leverage our efforts to establish real sanity in the way that we are working with our partners, our labor partners, our workforce partners, some real sanity and consistency in how we're working on these policies together, and making sure that we're doing this together and not creating systems that are very confusing and everybody kind of doing their own thing. And really at the end of the day is to influence this construction sector and create high road industry standards that help workers succeed. And we know that fundamentally, so much of the costs of our projects and the increased costs of our projects is because we don't have enough workforce to be able to do our projects. And there are multiple reasons why we are seeing numerous shortages in the workforce. So while the project's focus is on women and people of color, the strategies you will see are going to impact our overall capacity to get people working, to have our projects be completed on budget and on time. And we look forward to continuing this conversation with you. So slide 3. So we first convened this workforce, construction careers workforce project, really first with, you know, we were like, we need to understand what's happening in the industry. We need to understand what the problem is. And we commissioned a construction workforce market study with our community partners, and the City of Portland Metro contributed to this. And what we learned from this study, which was both a quantitative analysis and a qualitative understanding of what is happening in the industry, is really kind of that document really set the stage for us to understand what are the ways that we need to adjust what we do in order to increase the number of workers in this system. We are currently at phase 4 of this effort. So starting in 2018 with a market study, and now being ready, I think in just about an hour or two, to launch the first meeting of our regional collaboration committee that is convening all the partners who've adopted construction careers to come together with our workforce partners to really build that regional committee to help guide how we implement construction careers. So we'll go to the next. So in terms of our market study, I think, you know, we always want to ground our conversation in exactly what we learned. So ultimately we learned there are, at the time of the study, 81 capital projects, public sector projects, green lighted, ready to go, that would, you know, if every one of them was working today, would need an estimated 14,000 construction workers on the job. In order to address the shortages that we all clearly know are happening in our sector, we needed a comprehensive strategy to address some key things that we learned about in this study. So one of the things that we addressed early on with our partners is a lot of times when we talk about diversifying the construction sector, we often, as agencies, talk about contracting and diversifying our contracting. And we know that that is one component of creating equity in this sector. So ensuring women and minority-owned firms can successfully bid on projects is very, very important. And I think numerous of our agencies have plans to address that. But what we also know is that just selecting a contractor of color doesn't necessarily mean the workers on projects are diverse. We know that contractors all across, regardless of who you are drawing from the same workforce in the region. So if we don't have a sustained and diverse workforce, then all of our contractors will not be able to diversify on the projects. And when we think about the shortages, it's pretty dramatic. For every 5 construction workers nearing retirement, only 3 new workers under the age of 24 are entering this workforce. And when you look at completion rates, and again, you don't become a skilled tradesperson overnight. It takes many years of being an apprentice, learning on the job, learning in the classroom, to learn your trade, to get to a journey level worker. And what we have found in this study was overall completion rate for all workers entering this construction workforce is 46%. So that's less than half. But when we look at women, that percentage of retention is even lower at 38%. And when we look at people of color, it's even lower than that at 36%. And so our question is, what is happening in those overall numbers, and what is happening to women and people of color in the industry? And we have also learned in the market study that there's a lot of places where women and workers of color are facing barriers. Everything from even understanding and knowing what is our opportunities in this sector, accessing jobs in this sector, and barriers to actually staying in the jobs. And some of those barriers include just the difficulty of the work, and also it's a who you know industry. So there's a lot of personal relationships that help people get groomed and stay in the sector. And there's also a real known, I mean, we all know this, a culture of harassment on the work sites that create toxic work culture. All of these factors coming together really do impact whether a person who doesn't have already connections in the industry is able to access it and then to be able to stay in. So we'll just go to the next slide. So through a lot of work, you know, we convened about 19, I think 16 public sector partners to come together and to share, what are we all doing right now? What are we doing that's working? What are we doing that is maybe not producing the results that we want in terms of the diversity of our workforce? And then what are new ideas that we can draw from other regions in the country that have had more success? And what we found is that there's fundamentally 3 key approaches to building a successful construction careers pathway to success. So number 1 is agencies. We have to create the demand. So in order to create the demand means that on our projects, if we value diversity and ensuring that people really get a chance at these living wage careers, that we have to set up those demands up front on our projects. And so for the construction careers framework, what we're looking at is setting goals of total work hours, 20% apprentices. We need folks, we need to create the demand for apprentices on our jobs. 14% of all work hours are done by women and 25% for people of color. And we know that just today, based on where we're not going to get to those goals immediately. And so we have woven in a 7-year ramp up period so we can start to see the incremental change collectively over time. And one of the things we will be asking you as a jurisdiction is to set your own thresholds of when these goals kick in and when other elements of this framework get activated depending on the size of your projects. So if we're creating demand, which is good, that's step 1, then we also have to invest in the supply. We have to help the region produce the workers that we need in order to fulfill the goals that we are setting forth. And one of those really key aspects, and I'm so glad Bridget is here to partner with us on this, is we have to invest in the organizations that are drawing workers in, that are getting them excited about these careers and helping them maneuver and navigate in a career in construction. So organizations like Oregon Tradeswomen and Constructing Hope, Clackamas Workforce Partnerships really have the opportunity. How can we invest in their opportunity to recruit, retain, and provide ongoing case management for workers to help them succeed? And the second key piece, and this is a groundbreaking opportunity because we're working together, is creating opportunity to change the culture on our work sites, to actually invest in training and accountability on our construction work sites, to create safe and welcoming workplaces, to reduce and eliminate work culture, and help us succeed in that way on the ground every day with workers. And finally, the third piece is accountability. How do we know we're making a dent? How do we know that we are growing the workforce we need. And so really what we're calling for is all of our jurisdictions to work together in a regional collaboration to track similarly our numbers on our projects and how our contractors are doing, to share that information with each other, and to continue to have a long-term partnership with our labor partners, our building trades, our carpenters, our contracting community, and workforce advocates. So we're all kind of coming together to make sure that we're progressing in the goals and in the numbers of workers that are really finding lifelong careers. And so we'll just go to the last slide. And so we're really excited to share with you part of our work. We know that this system of construction, it takes all of us moving in the same direction, building, dare I say it, a pun, building the same thing together in order to be successful. And so we've been able to really bring on Prosper Portland, Multnomah County, Portland Public Schools, the City of Portland. They've all adopted formally the framework. We are also in pretty advanced conversations with TriMet and Washington County to also join us at this regional collaboration. And I think we don't have the logos here, but we have numerous contracting partners that are also working with us, including Clackamas Workforce Partnership, community-based organizations, our building trades and carpenters partners, and our contractor community. We just recently signed on Anderson Construction, a major construction company, to sign on to say that this is what it's going to take, all of us pulling in the same direction. So we'll just go to the next slide. So adopting construction careers really means that we're asking jurisdictions to adopt the goals that are laid out here, to commit to a strategy to investing in workforce supply, to tracking, committing to tracking and reporting progress together, to work with us to ensure that we have anti-harassment training on our job sites, and to join our regional committee so we could be in this relationship together and make sure we're moving forward together. And where jurisdictions have a lot of say and a lot of opportunity is setting your project thresholds. At what level of a project does it work for Clackamas County to institute goals, to institute other elements of this framework? Identify ways that you want to invest in your workforce supply with your partners, and developing workforce agreements that with our labor partners to make sure that we're all building towards success and can deliver on the goals, and to be willing to set a standard around implementation of an anti-harassment training, and what would that look like in your agency. So I want to just pass this on now to Bridget, who'll talk a little bit about Clackamas Workforce Partnerships support and building strategy with really a Clackamas County lens.
So I'm sorry if I may, we have 10 minutes left total in this session, so thank you.
Thank you for that, Gary. And thank you, Raahi, for the introduction. I appreciate the Board of County Commissioners taking this topic on. I can be very brief. Clackamas Workforce Partnership is very supportive of this regional effort, the C2P2 or Construction Careers Pathways Project. We have recently signed on as an endorser of the project. This is going to open up a lot of opportunities for our residents and our families in the area. And it complements the work that Clackamas Workforce Partnership is doing across other industries and across the broader region. As you know, we have a strong partnership with Work Systems and Workforce Southwest Washington and Columbia Willamette Workforce Collaborative. And so this is just another opportunity for us to move forward in that work. And this also, and I'll close by saying we've been really trying to bring a pre-apprenticeship program to the Clackamas area, because there are no pre-apprenticeship programs outside of Timberlake up on the mountain and Timberlake Job Corps. And so we are hoping that either through these funds or other grants that we apply for, that we'll be able to expand pre-apprenticeship in Clackamas County. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay. So I'll just, if there's any questions the commissioners have, we have a few minutes to answer that, but our ask basically today is hoping that you'll approve staff to go forward using this framework to develop a plan, what it would look like for Clackamas County to be part of this.
All right, Martha?
Yeah, Bridget, I really appreciate your backing this because, as I said, we are not strong in pre-apprenticeship programs. Could you please tell me the age group that normally you normally work with? I know Timberlake Job Corps. We're talking a lot about children's safety nets, and when I was at NACO, one of the issues was also workforce opportunities for kids. So are we talking junior high, high school? Can you give me some insight into that?
Yeah, that's a great question. There are actually youth apprenticeship programs that are available for high school students, not in the Portland Metro, or not registered in the Portland Metro area, to the best of my knowledge. I might be wrong about that, but there are construction programs, but not registered pre-apprenticeship programs for our 14 to 18-year-old. Our programs, the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act programs, go down to age 14 and up through age 24. So when we think of youth, we're thinking between age 14 to 24. And for the most part, ideally, we'd have pre-apprenticeship programs that are available for our adult community, and then be able to have conversations with our K-12 partners to expand youth pre-apprenticeship programs.
All right, thank you. Paul?
Yeah, I just want to just acknowledge that, the labor unions have great training programs, and I don't know if they have anything like this. I mean, I know they have apprenticeship programs, but a pre-apprenticeship program, specifically, I don't know. I know that they're on the partners list, and I just want to acknowledge that also that a lot of people in different trades or are interested or intrigued in different trades may at some point in their life realize that it may not be for them in the long run. And so I don't know if they're for people going in or steering people into a certain industry, if there is any programs that offer to graduate into bigger careers or more easy careers that are more opportune income levels and so forth. So opportunities for advancement that would otherwise maybe not be there. And with every industry, there's often a boom in construction. A lot of people I know in construction have the good times, and then they have experience some very difficult times. So those income levels, income streams is very, very hard on them in the bad times. And when you're raising a family, that's also very difficult. So whereas some industries are more stable. I mean, government, for example, is a very stable. But I just didn't know if there was that long-term planning elements of that as we try to steer younger generations into career paths.
Ken?
Well, I can tell you from conversations I've had with the laborers union specifically that they do in fact counsel their apprentices on financial management and planning for those inevitable times when construction fades for a while. So I would assume other apprenticeship programs do the same, though I can't say that for sure. But I definitely know the laborers do that with their apprentices. I have to tell you, when I heard about this, it really rang a lot of bells for me, both on a personal level as well as I guess I would say professionally. It touches on so many of our objectives as a county commission, from family wage jobs and on-the-job training for people where you get your hands on it. Obviously, the equity, diversity, and inclusion aspect of this is follows right into what we are trying to do in Clackamas County. And then from a personal level, quite frankly, after I got out of the Marine Corps, well, I did a year of college, went into the Marine Corps, got out, and really didn't know what I was going to do. And I took an apprentice program at Naval Air Station North Island, 4 years of junior college plus on-the-job training at the same time. Became a journeyman, worked at that until I decided I wanted to change careers. Made a living was able to support myself, met my wife at that same location. So it is truly very personal to me. I just think that this program is exactly what we need to be doing, and I like the fact that we would be doing it regionally, so everybody is on the same page. If you will, the competition all the way around is going to be the same for everyone. I am absolutely 100% for it.
So Martha, before I go to you, could you bring in Paul Philpott?
Sure.
He's an attendee. He's a union leader.
Yeah,
Oh.
he's here.
Christina.
So Paul, go ahead.
Hi, thanks for having me. I just wanted to point out a couple of things covering the pre-apprenticeship question. There is, speaking with Amber McCoy, the instructor who runs the pre-apprenticeship program at our training center, the Pacific Northwest Carpenters Institute. There is some logistics around it, but she has mentioned in the past that she can take that on the road if all the logistics are worked out. It's a 3-week program, and the graduates that graduate in the top tier get preferred entry into our apprenticeship program. The other thing for the younger people, we also have what's called Career Connections, which is a 3-year shop class for the high schools. And when they finish that program, it is treated like when the schools run it properly, it is treated as a pre-apprenticeship program. And those students that graduate with the certificates from that program also get preferred entry into our apprenticeship. So I just wanted to point those two things out, that there's a couple of things that could be done that could really start that pre-apprenticeship pipeline in Clackamas County. And the Career Connections program is really cost effective. We make our own books. We sell them basically at cost to the school districts. You get a dedicated outreach specialist that helps keep track of the students as they graduate. When they graduate high school, they get the certificates from our program that they can then take and come directly into our apprenticeship. So there's a lot of support there, and just wanted to point those out, that there are options and that I'd be more than willing to help.
Thank you, Paul. Sonia.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm really in support of this, and it's really nice to see everyone. Thank you so much for the presentation and all the hard work. If the chair is ready, I would like to make a motion that we adopt recommendations.
Commissioner, I'm going to interrupt you because
Sure.
I'm the workforce person, and I would very much like, because of all my years on workforce since 2003, if you don't mind, I'd like to make the motion and invite you to give the second.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you for that. So I move that we accept this whole process, C2P2. Commissioner.
I want all three of us to compete for the second. Come on. Give it to me.
Second.
Second. All right, we got it. Thank you, Commissioner Fisher. It's been a long time coming. I'm glad that this has become more part of our workforce. I hope it means for Clackamas Workforce Partnership that we can actually get more resources to them as well, as they continue to be our group that does this work in the county.
Now, if you guys had been around when I was a kid, I wouldn't have had to get into politics.
Oh, really?
Commissioner, I want to confirm you're approving option 1 in the staff report. Is that correct?
Yes.
Is that correct, Commissioner Schrader?
Yes.
Thank you.
Well,
Mr. Chairman,
yes.
for the benefit of the people in the audience, would you mind reading option 1 for those who may not actually know what the wording is?
Let's do it.
Yeah, I can go ahead and do that. It is to direct staff using the C2P2 framework presented by Metro to develop project thresholds and a specific plan for Clackamas County for future consideration by the board, including budget and department partner oversight recommendations.
All right, would you please
Okay, we
poll
got
us?
it.
Yes, Commissioner Fisher,
Aye.
Commissioner Humbertson,
Aye.
Commissioner Savas,
Aye.
Commissioner Schrader,
Enthusiastically, yes.
and Chair Bernard.
Aye, motion carries unanimously. Thank you for your presentation, and we look forward to working with you.
Jim,
Yes.
I gotta duck out for a phone call for a little bit, so I'll be back. So
Okay.
check out for just a bit.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Right. Thank you all. So commissioners, we will come back, staff will come back to you with the specific framework of how this impacts Clackamas County and report back to you soon. Thank you.
Thank you, Gary.
All right, we'll bring in the next session of presenters, please. Next, commissioners, is Columbia Distributing Rural Strategic Investment Zone Community Service Fee Distribution Schedule. We have staff from Business and Community Services and Assessment and Taxation to present. I'm not sure who's starting, so I'll introduce Laura Zentner and she can take it from there.
Good morning, everybody, or not good morning, good afternoon. Chair Bernard, Commissioners, Administrator Schmidt. My name is Laura Zentner, Director of Business and Community Services. And with me, I have Sarah Eckman, Deputy Director of Business and Community Services, Cindy Moore, our Economic Development Coordinator. With BCS, Lynn Longfellow, the Appraisal Manager for Assessment and Taxation. And then in the audience, we have Amanda Zieber, Interim City Administrator for the City of Canby, Jamie Stickle, Economic Development Director with the City of Canby, and Chief Jim Davis from the Canby Fire District. So we're here today to update you on the Columbia Distributing Rural Strategic Investment Zone, and I'm just going to say SIZ from here on out, Community Service Fee Distribution Schedule. So by way of background, Columbia Distributing is the first company to utilize the rural SIZ within Clackamas County. The rural SIZ is an incentive program where businesses with a project within the zone pay full taxes on the first 25 million investment. Taxes on in excess of 25 million are abated for 15 years. And then in addition, businesses pay an annual, something called a community service fee, which is the lesser of 25% of the business tax savings over that $25 million, or 500, whichever, again, the lesser of. So the community service fee requirement is intended to mitigate the loss of abated property taxes, as well as mitigate the direct impacts of the development on the community. And by state statute, establishment and the distribution formula for the community service fee may occur in one of two ways. The distribution of this fee can be negotiated between the taxing districts that are within that zone. And you have 3 months to do that from the date that Business Oregon approves the application. In this case, that was May 22nd. So we are on a timeline here. We have till August 22nd. If that is not achieved, then Business Oregon will do the distribution schedule for us and just tell us the distribution. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Cindy Moore, who could talk a little bit more, give a little bit more detail about how we negotiated and what we did with regards to coming up with some different schedules. So thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Administrator Schmidt and Commissioners. Glad to see you all safe and well. Thank you for the opportunity to present this information to you today. So following up on Laura's comments, to share a little bit about the methodology and the outreach that we did to date, or that we have done to date. On staff from the City of Canby notified all the taxing districts associated with the property by letter in January of this year, which both outline the details of the Rural Strategic Investment Zone and the community service fee. Then on June 23rd, a meeting for the taxing districts was held. During that meeting, representatives attended from Clackamas Community College and the Canby School District, both of which opted to waive their portion of the fee. Canby Fire also attended that meeting, and we had no other taxing districts that attended or provided comments, although we've been very open and transparent with our communication, and much thanks to the City of Canby for taking the lead on that, and to the Assessor's Office for pulling together the appropriate contacts. Then on July 16th, the second meeting was held with the City of Canby, the Canby Fire District and Clackamas County Business and Community Services, along with the Assessor's Office, to further clarify the details of the distribution schedule options. In that meeting, all parties agreed in principle to move forward the preferred option for your consideration. The details of that option will go into in further analysis with Lynn, who can walk the numbers. Following the meetings with the taxing districts and using the input received, staff has prepared the following options for your consideration on a distribution schedule for the community service fee. These percentages are listed in the attached, or the, sorry, not in the attached, but in the portion of the presentation today that Lynn's going to walk through. So there's 5 options that were being presented, so I'll just read them in title for those that might not have access to the policy session worksheet today. The first is a uniform distribution schedule. And that would mean that each of the taxing districts would basically receive the exact same allocation that they would if there was not a negotiated schedule presented. The second is all of the community service fee that would have gone to the education and the Port of Portland is distributed to the fire district. The third option is the city and the county and the fire district each receive 1/3 of the community service fee that would have gone to the education and the Port of Portland districts. The fourth option is a ratio based on each district's proportion of the community service fee without the education and the Port of Portland, and that ratio is used to distribute the education and the Port of Portland amount. And the fifth and final option is the preferred option from the staff that we're putting forward for your consideration today, and that's splitting the education and the Port of Portland option by thirds, with the county giving up 1/2 of their 1/3. So with that, I would like to take this opportunity to turn it over to Lynn Longfellow, our appraisal manager for Clackamas County Assessment and Taxation, to walk through the numbers that we have prepared for you today. And I just want to take a personal moment here to thank Lynn for all of her work. These are very complex schedules to go through, and she has been just an incredible help to our team. So with that, Lynn, you can take it away.
Okay, thank you, Cindy. Good afternoon, commissioners and administrators. Do you have the spreadsheets in front of you, or can I share my screen? It's kind of hard to talk in the abstract. There's a lot of numbers on it.
You can share it.
Okay.
You just have to get permission to do that. Are you?
I just gave her permission.
Okay.
Okay. Let me pull it up here.
Well, I think they're in our packet, right? The first page 4.
Yeah, I just can't look at it and do this.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Okay, can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, I'm scrolling down. So the important thing to note that I'm not going to get into the weeds of this unless you have specific questions are the percentages. The dollar amounts will change, but the percentages are what's important. So this is the uniform distribution schedule. And in this column right here, you see the percentage of the total rate by the entity. So the education categories in the Port of Portland have almost 38% of the total rate. City of Canby's at 33, the county's at 16.81, and the fire district's at 11.63. So that first option is just the uniform distribution schedule that the assessor's office uses to distribute all taxes. Let me see if I can blow this up. The second option here is all of that portion that would have went to the education categories in the port to the fire district. And that is this dollar amount right here. So 1 year, you know, we estimate 35,000 and change. So you see the percentages for the city and the county don't change. You know, they're still the same. And the fire district in this option would have almost 50% of the community service fee collected. The second option is equal thirds. So this dollar amount, again, that would have went to the education categories in the port, an equal third is distributed amongst each entity. So here's the percentage change. You know, this is the uniform distribution. And this is the percentage change with this option. The fourth option is the ratioed option. And that is essentially, I took this dollar amount and whatever percentage for each district, that's the percentage they got of that. So over here in this yellow column would be the percentage per entity. So here's the city, here's the county, and the fire district. And then the preferred option, as Cindy indicated, was we started with the 1/3 to each of the three entities, city, county, fire, but the county agreed to give up 1/2 of that third, and then that half, the city and the county, or excuse me, city and the fire district each got half of that half, if that makes sense. So the city, you know, gets this amount and the fire district gets that same amount, but the county's portion is reduced. So here's the percentages when you look at it that way. The city at 49.43, the county at 23.13, and the fire district at 27.44. The last, and this is, yes.
Lynn, can I clarify for everybody? So just so you know, over 15 years, the amount that we are talking about distributing between the three entities is $1.7 million. And you can see on this sheet, Clackamas County would get almost 400,000. And then the number to the left, the 92,000 is the annual amount. So I just want you to be aware of scope of, if you think when you're looking at this, it's 1.7 million over 15 years distributed between the three entities. Sorry to interrupt you, Lynn, but I just, no, we've been doing this so long that it's in our brain, but they don't know.
Sure, no, that's good to point out. That is the abated tax, and that is an estimate of the community service fee based upon the abated tax. Again, the numbers will change, so the percentage is important to note because the agreement will not list dollar amounts, it will list percentages. And then the last thing I want to point out, the last spreadsheet is a preferred distribution schedule. And you can see that essentially what was done is we rolled up local options and bonds into the entity that they would belong to, because local options and bonds come and go and we don't want to renegotiate these percentages every year. So they're just rolled up. So this is the list of the actual districts that would receive the uniform distribution fee in the preferred option. Any questions or anything I can clarify?
Well, I'm not, oh, well, let's go with Ken first.
I guess the thing that I've missed in this whole discussion is the rationale of why the county should give up 1/2 of its, would you say 1/2 of 1/3? Yeah.
Yes.
What's the rationale for that?
So the rationale was just mainly that the city of Canby and the Canby Fire District are directly impacted by having Columbia distributing in their city. And there are infrastructure improvements that have to be done, as well as additional fire service work that has to be done on an annual basis. And so that is the rationale.
Okay, so in effect, it's to assist them with infrastructure issues, correct?
Correct.
Is there an assurance that that's where the money will go? I mean, specifically, it's going to go into infrastructure and not just into the general fund.
I do not believe that that is in the actual agreement that we have.
Because if that's their stated intention, it seems to me it ought to be. I mean, if we're giving up a portion of our take on this to help them with the infrastructure issue, understand that does meet one of our goals as a county, which is infrastructure. Seems to me that there ought to be a firm commitment that that's where the money goes.
Cindy, do you know if that's something that can be drafted into the agreement that we have, or?
Yes, I was just going to chime in on that. I can certainly talk to County Council and to Business Oregon about incorporating a line into the intergovernmental agreement that'll be coming back to you upon direction that we received today on which option for the distribution schedule. I'm putting that language in there. I can certainly follow up on that.
Thank you.
Sonia.
Yeah, thank you, everyone. This is ever so complex. You did a really good job bringing some solidification to my brain as from the materials. I just want to ask one question. It says in the materials that in the meeting, all the parties agreed in principle to move the preferred option forward for consideration. So I'm just curious, was there any controversy about that? Were there any other perspectives, or was it pretty much consensus that this is the best, the preferred option that you're recommending is the optimal way to go?
Yes, I can speak to that. During the discussion on July 16th, that was the staff determination with all parties that participated. So the City of Canby, Canby Fire District, BCS, and the Assessor's Office all came to consensus around that preferred option to be moved forward. And there were no other participants in that July 16th meeting because the three entities, as mentioned, make up that 75% that we need to be at.
Okay. He says 1.5 million over 15 years.
It's 1.7.
I mean,
it's an estimate.
That's small change and not something we want to battle over. I can see that. All right, so entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, tentatively, I move to approve option 5, but I would like to see the language in there that makes sure that the money is dedicated to the intent that came out of those discussions. If they're saying it, they need that money for their infrastructure, I get that. I'm willing to help support that. They ought to be willing to commit to that. I haven't heard from my other colleagues on that, but that's kind of where I'm at.
And for the fire district, though, it wasn't for infrastructure, it was actual service provision to support having Columbia distributing in the Canby Fire District. And
okay. Yeah, I remember having
fire life safety checks and et cetera. I don't know their business, but it was.
Well, I remember having the discussion with the fire chief about the tax issue and the impact on their fire department. So I can go with that. I just want to make sure the money goes where it's committed to go, and is not just into the general fund for use in any old way.
All right, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to support option 5. And with the provision that there be something in there about where they spend the money. That'd be the city, right? Yes.
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 Would you please poll the commission?
Commissioner Fisher?
Aye.
Commissioner Humbertson?
Aye.
Commissioner Schrader?
Aye.
And Chair Bernard?
Aye, motion carries 4-0. Thank you. Appreciate all the work you guys did.
Yes.
Yep.
Thank you very much.
Wrestling over money is always difficult.
Yes.
Gary.
All right.
What's up?
Thank you. Moving on for Housing Authority. Housing Authority, Arbor Terrace Apartments, transfer of ownership.
Let's do it.
Sorry, actually, we're ahead of schedule, so we could go to Commissioner Communications. Well, we have 10 minutes before the next session. My apologies. So back to Commissioner Communications from this morning.
Let's start with Sonia up in the left-hand corner on my screen.
I'm in the middle on my screen. So I participated in the Reimagine Oregon press conference this morning while you all were at Issues. I would really encourage everyone, it is recorded. You can find it on Facebook. I'll be watching your hour of Issues. If you could watch this press conference, it would be really helpful to do that. basically, there was a lot of good information shared by all the jurisdictions. They did a process where they had one of the advocates in the community introduce each jurisdiction about what their commitments were on the spreadsheet, and then the electeds chimed in. Basically, all that I shared with, and I'm not sure if everybody got a copy of my talking points. I had asked that that be shared with everyone, but I just went through our what we had committed to, not things that were in discussion or in process, but the things that we absolutely said would happen. And that was the gist of my comments. I can tell you that I think the questions were all around, how do you funnel the passion from the protests into this conversation? How are the protests not distracting from this conversation? Lots of questions about the process that has been done with this reimagine. And I really don't doubt that we will be listed in this press release at all, but I just wanted to give you all an update. And if anybody has any questions about that, I'm happy to answer them.
I don't see any hands. Oh, Martha.
So thanks, Sonia, for doing what you do. I had a question. Is there going to be another joint meeting on Friday?
I don't know. Brenda, do you know?
Yes, there's one scheduled for Friday. I believe it's from 11 to 1.
If we noticed it, we could have everybody attend just to listen in. Is that something we want to do? Is anybody else on the commission interested in that? I know Paul goes, you go.
Yeah, I would love it if my other commissioners could be
Okay.
part of this. I would really love that.
As long as we notice it, it would be okay.
Yeah.
All right. So Ken, are you interested?
Yes.
Okay. All right. And
okay, we will update our public notice.
And Paul, you'll be going, right? Yeah.
Well, so just want to clarify. So I have 2 appointments on Friday morning, one of which I booked like a month ago. And
okay.
So I hope to be able to join, but it won't be, I might be late in joining. I don't know how long it's going to last, but I just had, so I had that, and I was under the impression that they weren't going to meet until a few months, or not a few months, but several weeks from today. Even I didn't think it'd be this soon, and that's what my understanding was when I booked my appointment over a month ago. So I suggest that you all participate. I mean, it's
okay, and then we can touch back with you.
Sure, and if I happen to get, if my appointment doesn't last that long and I can make it, that's great. And then I have one following, so I might have to leave a little bit early, but I believe it's what, 11 to 1, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Right.
I have to be on strategy at 11:30, but that's okay. I can start out with that.
Martha, that's moved to 2.
Oh, it's moved
Friday,
to 2.
so it'll
okay.
be perfect.
All right.
Yeah,
okay.
The other piece that I would love to hear what our commissioners are thinking about. So Jim received a letter from Lynn Peterson about denouncing the feds being in Portland, and Jim didn't sign on. I had this strong personal feeling that that would be a distraction from what the issues are regarding Black Lives Matter, and I personally didn't feel comfortable signing on.
Yeah.
I don't know where my other commissioners are, but I would love to have a conversation with everyone to see, we're leaders here. We have influence. I've been texting different people to say, hey, look, guys, the feds aren't leaving. We need to find a way to stop the violence. This is not good. What can we do? I mean, if there's any interest in engaging this conversation, I'm not sure the right forum. I'm not sure how, but this is very concerning. I am very concerned about the escalation and what's happening in Portland. It affects our whole region. And the feds aren't leaving. They've said it, they're not going.
I think that part of the problem is that if local law enforcement was just able to protect the building, I think they'd leave. I think that this has given an opening for the federal government to exert more authority than we would like them to have locally. But if the local law enforcement in Portland is feeling beleaguered and that they can't that they can't just, you know, nobody minds peaceful protesting, you know, it's the damage, it's the whatever else goes on that's causing the real problem. And we, in my opinion, we have to give them a reason to leave. And if there's any way we could peacefully, and I'm going to look at Ken and putting you on the spot, what do you think? That people could just stop the building from getting, you know, attacked, that would go a long way. Because I don't particularly want the federal government here. I think we should take care of our own issues. Ken, what do you think?
I don't think sending a letter to to the administration is worth the paper it's printed on.
Yeah.
If this was an administration that listened to local government, that would be a different story. Might be a different story. It doesn't appear to be the case.
Mm-hmm. You're talking about the federal administration, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay. Is there any way we can talk to our other?
Frankly, what it comes down to is you write the letter, it's grandstanding, it has no effect whatsoever. If it's not going to have an effect, then all you're doing is raising false hopes with people and sending a false message. It's going to be up to the citizenry in Portland and the leadership in Portland to resolve the issue.
Yeah.
I think they need.
Sorry. Go ahead,
I
Jim.
think they need to end the protests.
Yeah.
And we need to get back to business. Damaging things, there's no excuse for it. And the federal government needs to leave. I think we've heard, we've listened, we're trying our best to make the adjustments that we can. And we've participated in change. And right now, I can tell you that Portland is on national, probably world news. Matter of fact, my friends in Australia asked if I was okay. And we need to end it and get back to work. I mean, this is destroying Oregon or Portland area reputation around the world. And we need to stop it. And, you know, I'm committed to work to resolve the historic damage that has occurred to people of color as much as we possibly can at Clackamas County and in the region.
Jim, I think you're right. That's exactly, in my mind, let's focus in our own home and make sure that wherever we have policies, procedures, practices that are not fair to all concerned, that we change those. And let's I want to put our energy into that. And I think I may have interrupted Martha, and I apologize.
I think Sonia is actually the one doing
So I'm sorry I stepped off for a minute. Believe it or not, my battery died. I was not keeping attention to my device. So I'm glad you were to engage in the conversation. Please, you guys, especially you, Jim, watch that hour if you would be so kind. The protests aren't going to stop, but I think that our influence, I don't have a personal relationship with Ted Wheeler. I have barely a casual relationship with Joanne Hardesty, but I think the more that we can use the relationships we have to communicate. I have an excellent communication with a U.S. attorney who I went to law school with, who used to be on the Metropolitan City Council, who's been providing really good insight and information. But I think we can try to influence behind the scenes, and I would really encourage everyone to do that. As far as what Ken was saying, for our interest, I've been working, so appreciate Gary Schmidt, Sue Hildick, all of our team on having us all do a town hall on all of these issues, because we need to hear from our constituents and we need to represent the people of Clackamas County in these conversations, and we will do that best if we have a dialogue and we hear what concerns are, and I know that our staff is working on putting that together. So, but if there's any other thoughts, I think it's good for us to just talk about it. And then my other last bit of my communication is I have a doctor's appointment at 3:30. So I'm going to be in the next policy session driving to my doctor's appointment, listening to the policy session, and then I'll be in the parking lot at 3, participating in the children's levy, but then be done at 3:30. So I just wanted folks to know if they thought that Commissioner Fisher was incognito, but I didn't want to reschedule this one again. So,
well, it's time for the next policy session. Could you get back to this, Paul? You want to say something quickly?
Yeah, I just want to say, so what is the schedule for revisiting the reimagine stuff that was before us, that staff was going to come back? What's this, Brenda, are you there? There you are.
Yes. And Gary.
When are we supposed to be? I thought we were supposed to be addressing that by now.
We actually were supposed to look at it this morning, and there's a whole list. Am I right, Brenda?
No, we actually, to bring back the funding request, is that what you're referring to?
The funding request.
The whole thing, all of it.
Yeah, Gary had indicated that he wanted to wait for Martine, and I have started reaching out to the pertinent departments that may have funds that they could direct towards that. Gary?
That's on the funding request. The document for the joint meetings, you already approved that 2 weeks ago prior to that joint meeting. Commissioner Fisher mentioned it today, and it's already in the Oregon Live. It's already in the article, and it's online on a website created called Reimagining Oregon, I believe, is the new updated website. So honestly, I don't know why you're having a meeting this Friday, because you're basically done. However, the schedule.
All right.
Well, Lamar Wise said that he and said to everyone in the press conference, the Clackamas County is in conversations. He's presenting before Washington County's board. I'm not sure what conversations have gone on with Lamar, but I do think that we need to hear from folks. And I've been having really awesome conversations with Angie Brandenburg about how we can have our law enforcement not do social work kind of activities and how we redo things. And we just have such opportunities. There's such engagement on these issues that I think a lot of positive good can come out of it. So.
Okay, well, I just want to finish what I was trying to ask. So thank you for answering the question, Brenda. I just wanted to say that I did watch the recording of the session. I thought I heard Lamar say very clearly before you spoke, Sonia, that Clackamas County made a financial commitment. That's what I heard. Later, he didn't say that. He said something different, but that's what I heard. So I think that needs to be addressed. Maybe you did. I thought maybe you contacted them and cleared that up, because we have not made a commitment. I made a commitment to bring it back to the board. We've done that. We haven't got there yet. So, and I also thought it was very gracious of Chair Harrington to mention her colleague in the phone call. I thought that was very nice of her.
All right, so let's move on to the next issue.
All right, next, back to policy sessions. This is Housing Authority, Arbor Terrace Apartments transfer of ownership. You are now sitting as the Housing Authority of Clackamas County. We have Housing Commissioner Leenstra, who is about to join you, and our staff from the Housing Authority. So Jill, I'll kick it off to you to begin, please.
Good afternoon, commissioners. I'm Jill Smith. I'm the Executive Director of the Housing Authority of Clackamas County. And we're here before you today to review a recommendation that we transfer Arbor Terrace Apartments, which is a farm worker residential property that consists of 25 units in Molalla, The financing is through the Farm Worker Housing Development. I'm sorry, the financing is through the USDA Rural 514 program. We are recommending, and we're going to go through our reason for this, that ownership is transferred to Farm Worker Housing Development Corporation, FHDC, who specializes in running this program. And I'm going to turn it over for the next few points to Stephen.
Good afternoon, Commissioner. Stephen McMurtrey, Director of Housing Development with the Housing Authority. Today we're here to talk to you about Arbor Terrace. Again, I'm going to be echoing some of the things that Jill mentioned, and then give a high-level overview of some of the issues that we see and why we explored this option to potentially transfer the property, and then open it up for questions. Arbor Terrace, as Jill mentioned, is financed under the USDA Rural, what we call the RD program, 514 program. It's 25 units in Malala. The site is the only property of its type that HAC has in its portfolio. It is third-party managed because HAC staff, when this was constructed in 1992, which predates many of our being at the county, it was my understanding was that it was a property type that we were considering taking on, maybe in larger scale, but never ultimately did. The USDA RD financing program has particular nuance to it that is very dissimilar in its management and compliance requirements than, say, our public housing portfolio, or even the low-income housing tax credit properties that we own and are operating. So it's very unique. We use a third-party management company to manage this site, but because the scale of the building is so small at only 25 units and we don't have another one in our portfolio, it's quite expensive for us to have it third-party managed. The result is that at the end of the year, the property lacks really the necessary financing to keep up with its capital repairs. Recently, a community development block grant was used to replace roofs at the site, but there are several other capital repairs that the building needs. And in addition to that, the low cash flow that's received off of this property, the capital repair issues that I mentioned, we can't provide really any robust resident services, certainly not resident services that are culturally specific. So as a result of some of those challenges with the property, we explored, the Housing Authority did, and put out through a competitive RFP, a request to see if there were organizations that would be interested in transferring and owning, having us transfer, and they would own this property. Under the RD program, the USDA RD program, we are not allowed to sell the property outright. It must be a transference, and so it's a fairly involved process to go through that. So we went through a competitive RFP, and Farm Worker Housing Development Corporation were the successful awardees of that RFP. And what we're asking today is to allow us to further this process, to work with both FHDC and with HUD and through the USDA program to transfer this property over to them. And I want to highlight one of the main reasons here is that, and sort of pertains to the conversation that you all were having a minute ago, I want to come back to the resident services portion of this. HAC and the way that the building operates right now just do not have those robust, culturally specific resident services that this population needs. It's by and large a Latinx population, and Farm Worker Housing Development Corporation, this is their specialization. This is what they do. They own and operate farm worker housing throughout our county and in other counties around the state. They've been doing it for many, many years. They're a great project partner. They're looking to expand their business influence in Clackamas County, and this helps also build up on their side, their service side, and also their ownership and management book. So again, our recommendation is for the board to allow us to move forward with this process, to continue to work with USDA and FHDC for this property transference. And I'll open it up to questions there.
Martha?
Yes, thank you for that, because this has been one of my issues for a while, because most of the dollars that we've recently procured through various other initiatives don't really address the rest of our county, particularly when it comes to the Latino, Latinx community and what their needs are, as well as the services. And I have long said on more than one occasion that we should be looking at USDA dollars in order to fill that gap. And evidently we don't have the bandwidth to do that. Is that correct?
Yeah, it is a fairly specialized program. We don't have the bandwidth. We don't have the requisite training to sort of take that on programmatically. And because of the populations as well that we're largely dealing with, the Latino, Latinx, and especially that's why we were recommending that this transfer over to a nonprofit partner that really specializes in this.
So I'm okay with the transfer. I'm just absolutely, they're not going to get what they need unless it's transferred over. But the larger issue is that we as a housing authority and as housing folks are only serving, in my opinion, in the urban areas of our county, and that's what worries me the most. Mm-hmm. And I constantly track what the USDA has to offer. Quite frankly, I'm more than willing to call people myself and just go make it happen if I can get the contacts for this, because our concentration has been largely in urban homelessness and the Portland region. And I'm really worried that we aren't really adequately serving the rest of the county. And if we don't have the bandwidth, is there any way we can pull together a coalition of the rural, I don't know. Should I just get on the phone and call people and do it? No, okay, I'm okay with that, guys. I don't want to give you any more work, but I keep thinking I should be calling the Farm Bureau. I should be calling directly to the USDA representative. I should be, and I don't want to go off and be rogue, but we don't have the capacity to really handle what the issue is, the other part of our county with this. And
I would love to address your concerns because I share those. And I think that the best way that we can serve some of these folks that are not, in the area that we're serving well right now is through partnerships. And when we receive these additional funds through this Here Together measure, that will allow us to reprioritize our existing funding and focus it outside of the metro area. And I actually have asked staff to think about adding a chapter, an addendum to our plan that we're going to write for our Here Together measure about how we're going to change the way we spend existing dollars.
Because my understanding was that wasn't doable, but it is doable. Because if it's doable, we should do it.
It's doable. It doesn't mean it will be easy. It'll be a process, but I really think it's critical that we do things differently. This is Jill's opinion. I think we need more partnerships that, just like FHDC, that specialize in serving folks. I went and visited 2 of their properties that they run and was so impressed. They've got community builders. They're empowering women at the properties. They have a preschool program. They have a school-age children program. They've got employment programs. That is what this property needs. And there is nothing stopping us from funding these partners to provide these services.
So can we start applying for USDA dollars for this kind of housing? Because I get these all the time and I'm like, should I just sit and write a grant just because I can and I'm bored? I'm just saying.
I think we need, I would like to encourage us to support our partners to do that.
Well, I would too, but I'm kind of at a loss. And when I was a farmer in Canby, I just took it on myself and made it happen. I just feel like we neglected it. I feel as if it's something that we need to address, but I'm also understanding the pressure that staff is under with everything else you're doing. So if we could figure out those partnerships and work with them to get at USDA dollars there, that would make the most sense to me.
One of the plans that FHDC actually has is if you were to visit the site, there's quite a bit of additional land that isn't used on this site, and they want to not only do a substantial rehab of the site, but expand it. And they have the expertise and knowledge to do that well.
So they could be a partner who could write the grant, who could get the right people collaborative together in the rural communities, get the mayor, the city councils on board, and really start working that kind of an opportunity for that underserved demographic, right?
They can, yes, they can be
Okay.
a great partner for that.
Okay. Well, I'd sure like to see that as a priority, and I'm glad this came up with the transfer because it's been worrying me for a number of months now. So thank you.
All right, Paul.
So I have a bigger question. Just stepping back and figure out how we deal with Latinx communities or any other community in our housing projects throughout the county in the rural area outside the metro boundaries. I mean, it sounds like the rationale for transferring this property to this other nonprofit in and of itself doesn't bother me, but I guess what I'm trying to say is that how are we going to cope with that challenge of having the language skills and all of that culturally specific needs and projects we own? Are we just going to keep them all English speaking and then we're going to defer everything else? I mean, it doesn't seem like having that mixture in our facilities, a facility specific, is doable. If I'm hearing it right, am I misunderstanding the rationale here or the situation?
So the main rationale for asking for this transfer to occur is because there is real specific skills and knowledge linked to running USDA Rural 514 programs. And I don't think it's a good business decision for 25 units to learn that skill internally to the Housing Authority of Clackamas County. And I know that this other entity can do a much better job both managing, improving, and providing services to the people that live there. We don't have to do that. As we get this additional service funding, we're here together and can redirect service funding to the rural areas. We certainly can both partner and do it ourselves, providing services when we have the funding. Right now, this property doesn't give us any funding at all to provide resident services to this property. It's challenging because of the location as well.
So Jill, getting back to the language services are for those culturally specific populations, how are we going to cope with that in projects we own in rural parts of the county?
So we already do, as a housing authority, we are required to provide all of our documents in languages of people that we serve that represent 5% or more of our Clackamas County population. We do have our documents in Russian and in Spanish. We also have people that speak those languages fluently that interact with the people we serve every day. And our resident services folks are also fluent in different languages. And that is something we need to continue to work on and do better at. Because we've been charged to do outreach to people of color for our new properties we're developing. But again, our partnerships and our ability to serve others well might be through contracts, and it might be through us doing it directly. It doesn't have to. It can be through us being excellent contract administrators as well.
Okay, my last question, Jill, is that because of the way the homeless supportive services measure was put together at the fast pace it was, we weren't able to lock down a lot of the specifics as far as the structure and the framework, how everything works. And one of the things I knew we were working on was in there somehow was not, basically a rule or something that we couldn't cut funding in one area and then supplant it with supportive services money. So your idea of moving some of those monies from inside the urban growth boundary monies that and then shifting them to the rural, is that in violation of, or is that,
No.
how's that work?
No, we wouldn't be reducing funding or supplanting funding. We'd still be using the funding for the purpose it was intended, just with a priority to serve people outside of the metro boundary.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right, any further questions, commissioners?
Excuse me, my mic was not. There are no further questions. I wondered if Ann had a motion that she wanted to read. Your mic.
Yeah, sorry. I move that we facilitate this transfer over to the entities mentioned and move it on to the commissioners meeting for final approval.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to proceed with the transfer and to bring it to a business meeting for a final decision. Any other discussion? Seeing none, Christina, would you survey us?
Unmute, Christina.
Darn it. Commissioner Lindstrom,
Aye.
Commissioner Fisher. I'm not sure if she's still there.
No, she's not.
Okay. Commissioner Hubbardston.
Aye.
Commissioner Savas.
Aye.
Commissioner Schrader.
Aye.
And Chair Bernard.
Aye, motion carries 5-0. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yes.
Thank you.
Sorry to interrupt, Chair Bernard. I see that Sonia wrote
did,
aye in the comment.
Oh, okay. All right, so 6-0. With that, thank you. And we are now going to return to the Board of County Commissioners for the remainder of the meeting, I believe.
Yes, and so this item will be on your August 6th business meeting consent agenda, commissioners. You now have 8 minutes before the next policy session if you'd like to return to Commissioner Communications.
Let me see. Sonia was doing it. Paul?
Don't have anything for today, thank you.
Martha?
Nope, I'm doing fine.
Ken?
None today.
All right, so I'm good too. So we will take an 8 or 7.5 minute break.
Yay. Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys. All right.
Yes, we're ready. I missed the speaker.
Okay, commissioners, this is Children's Safety Levy survey results. We have Dylan from Public and Government Affairs and members from Strategies 360, which was the pollster. So Dylan, I'll let you introduce the session and go ahead, please.
Excellent. Thank you, County Administrator Schmidt. Good afternoon, commissioners. Good to see you. I'm Dylan Blaylock with Public and Government Affairs. This before you is a summary presentation of the Children's Safety Levy survey results. Late last year, the BCC approved the commission of the public poll to test whether or not voters would support a children's levy on the upcoming ballot. With me today, all from Strategies 360, are Lindsay Mears, Dave Hunt, and Amy Ruiz. They will be leading the discussion today. I believe Lindsay will kick it off. The only thing I need to make sure, I guess this is for Christina, can Lindsay share her screen or not?
It looks like I can.
Okay, then that's it. So I'll pass off to Lindsay. Thank you all.
Okay, fabulous. We'll just dive right in because there's a lot to dig in here too, and I know we have a limited amount of time. So let me share my screen with you now. 1 second. Okay. Can everyone see my screen? You should see.
Yeah. Now we can.
Okay. We conducted a survey of 400 likely voters in Clackamas County to understand their support for a potential item on the ballot this year. The survey was conducted at the end of June, and the margin of error for such a survey is plus or minus 4.9 points. Conducted on a mixed mode, the combination of landline phones, mobile phones, and online interviews via a web panel, just to ensure that we were getting the greatest coverage possible and that we were able to make it as representative as possible. First, we want to understand broadly a little bit more about our voters and their priorities before we go right in. So to talk a little bit about some of the items that would affect how they approach decisions, first off, 3 and 4, like the county homeowners. And when we're talking about support for a potential new levy, that really is important. Additionally, more than half, 53%, say they personally know a survivor of abuse, and that is, of course, relevant to the subject here. On questions like this, you tend to see the number was actually a little bit higher, but what we know is that for at least half of voters, this is a highly personal subject. And when we want to understand a little bit more about where their exact priorities lie and what types of groups are important to emphasize that these programs would be helping, of course, all of these groups are considered high priorities by people. We rank who should be the top priority for the county. The groups that rise to the top are those suffering from abuse or neglect, and teens and children exploited in sex trafficking. The other groups are high priorities, a little bit lower scale. Now, in assessing support for the levy itself, we ask it 3 separate ways. First, what we want to do is ask an initial upfront question, yes or no, not providing any additional information to them, just a clean read on how they feel right now. And then we ask it 2 more times, providing a little bit more information and messaging along the way. In an initial support question, what we see is that support is high, 57% support the levy, with room to improve. This is a good number. It's a very strong place to start, and I'll show over the course of the story that we're able to increase that number with even just some fact-based information.
I need to interrupt you a minute. We are having trouble with hearing you sometimes.
I'm sorry about that. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, for the moment.
Well, it's actually breaking up. So sometimes if you turn your video off, it might be able to help help the audio part. That's the part we're struggling with.
I see. My video is off. I will move a little closer to the microphone, and please jump in if you can't hear me. Okay, to dive right back in here, support is high, and it's highest among Democrats, those without a 4-year degree, low-income voters making less than 50K, and those in more urban areas. We also see that it's lowest among Republicans. This is the only group where support is net negative, and this is an important group to watch. Their support changes substantially throughout the survey. When we provide a little bit more information, nothing persuasive or any kind of messaging, simply a little bit more explanation on the types of programs that would be funded and the amount that the levy would cost, support increases by 14 points. And that includes 37 definitely supported. I always like to look at that intensity. It's a very important number. What we see here is that support is not broad but shallow, but actually that it's both broad and deep. And we do see some evening out here in those gaps by party, education, income, and area. Republicans experience the most dramatic shift, 29 points. Almost 2 in 3 Republicans moved towards supporting the levy after hearing a little bit more about it. And finally, they were shown a couple of reasons to support the levy, a little bit more persuasion involved. And we'll get into which of those messages is most compelling for voters a little later. But just to show this final measure with support, it leads to an uptick of plus 16 points from that initial measure. So 73% of support measure, including more than a third who are intense and very strong member support. What we see is that a vote progression is strong and demonstrates a clear path to shoring up support with people who are with you from the beginning and those who are a little bit more on the fence. We're not just pulling from people that were undecided, though we are pulling them into the yes vote. We're pulling from people that initially were inclined to vote no. And if we look at this by subgroup, your growth in support is due primarily to increases among voters under the age of 50, those in more rural areas, Republicans, as I mentioned, low and high income voters. Your middle income voters tend to be a little bit of a different story, white voters and men. Next, we want to understand the scale of investment, really the point at which people are willing to commit and invest in such a program. And we ask this a few different ways to really get an understanding of where people's support strengthens and falls off depending on the cost. The first way we did this was to split sample the initial ballot measure. And the way we do this is half of the respondents see that it will cost 10 cents per $1,000 assessed property value, and half saw it would cost 20 cents per $1,000 assessed value. Not much difference between 10 and 20 cents. My hypothesis here is that it's simply because it's not a tangible amount for them. There's nothing to contextualize that money for them. And so we see a little later when we are able to make that a bit more tangible in terms of what it actually costs the average homeowner, there are some differences. The second way we measured the scale of investment was in the second measure of support, the informed support. And the way we did this was again by split sampling. Half of the survey respondents saw that it would cost the average homeowner $30 per year in additional property taxes, and half of the respondents saw that it would cost them an additional $60 per year. Despite the fact that this is a fairly substantial difference in cost, $60 is double, there's not a huge difference here, far less than I actually. Some divergence, lower cost option is popular, but support measure across both points. And the third way we assessed the scale of investment was to ask voters in increasing increments, at this amount of additional property taxes per year for you, would you support or oppose the measure? Going up in $10 increments to $60. What we see is that support drops off between $40 and $50 in additional taxes per year. Now, what's really interesting about this question is when we get to the subgroup analysis. Cost sensitivity, yes.
Lindsay, could you actually go back to that previous slide? Because I just wanted to make sure everyone is clear. Unlike a lot of the other results where it's the entire poll sample, this one is just homeowners. So it's the subset of the poll respondents that are just homeowners for this slide.
Yes, thank you, Dave. Correct. Thank you for pointing that out. This is just among homeowners. They're the ones most impacted by a property tax. So we want to make sure we have a good understanding of where they fall out. And this same question.
I may just want one thing on that back on that same slide, clarification. That's based on a $300,000 home all the way through, right?
I believe that's correct, and Amy can confirm that when we get to the end. I think she has the big spreadsheet on it. Looking at that by subgroup, we can assess where there's some higher or lower cost sensitivity. Cost sensitivity is highest among Republican homeowners and those who are not likely to support the proposal anyway. Those are those voters voting no all 3 times we ask. There is also some cost sensitivity among your younger voters, baby boomers, voters of color, and rural voters. For all of these groups, support reverses between $30 and $40 per year, whereas for the average homeowner, it reverses between $40 and $50 per year. Those with a little bit more tolerance are Democrats, seniors, high-income voters, those in the urban and western areas of the county, and your base supporters. And we'll talk a little bit more about the demographic makeup of your base supporters later. Okay. Now, we tested 2 messages. These are reasons to support the levy. One emphasized the local focus, that the dollars will stay in the community in Clackamas County, and that it's really going towards community-based nonprofits with a reputable track record of people who really know what they're doing and are have the experience to provide these services. The other focuses on the pandemic and the downturn, which have really just uncovered a demonstrated need for these services, and the fact that this need perhaps is even greater than it's ever been. These are both compelling messages. They are convincing among a majority of voters countywide. However, the strongest message really is local. It's really emphasizing the fact that the dollars stay here and that it's going to people who work here and live here and are experienced in providing the programs here in Clackamas County. It's the preferred message across nearly every subgroup except for political independents. Independents, by a very small margin, prefer the crisis message, the one about the increased need for these services. However, both messages are strong with this group regardless. When it comes to delivering information about the levy and about the services that will be provided, those advocates, you really have a couple of choices for who that can be. Those with direct experience with abuse and with providing the services are seen as the most credible advocates. Survivors themselves and leaders of local nonprofits who work with these programs and work with these groups are considered the most trustworthy messengers for this. However, the county sheriff and social workers come out on top as well. And by subgroup, you're harder to get groups such as Republicans tend to rate the sheriff as their top choice. This is not surprising. In most surveys that I do when we talk about the sheriff's office or who can be a trusted advocate, people don't see the sheriff as an elected official so much as law enforcement, and these groups tend to trust law enforcement a great deal. Though never first, social workers come in second for key supporters such as Democrats, voters of color, your low-income voters, and urban voters. And your faith leaders are really, they're less important in this conversation, and elected officials do tend to fall out on the bottom, which is not uncommon. And I promised we would look at the demographic makeup of these different supporters. There's 3 groups we want to keep in mind. Those are your base supporters, people who voted yes every single time, the 3 times we asked about their support. And your persuadables, these are people that change their vote. They're movable, and they can really be shifted from a no to a yes. And then there's the people who are going to vote no every time. It really matters how big each of those groups are in determining the path to victory and what's possible. The good news here is that your base supporters make up more than half of the electorate. They're 53% of likely voters countywide. They tend to be women. They tend not to have a 4-year degree. They aren't necessarily low income, but they're not high income. They make less than $100,000 per year, tend to be Democrat and white, and they're slightly less likely to be homeowners, which is unsurprising considering that it's proposing a property tax.
Lindsay, this is Dylan. It is 3:15, and we do need to give the board enough time for questions. So if you could please wrap up the presentation.
Fabulous. We are moving along. I just want to note that your persuadables make up another 27%. For those keeping track at home, that's 8 out of every 10 voters are either base supporters or movable. So I just want to turn it over very quickly to Melissa, who has a couple of points to add.
I don't believe Melissa's with us. I think we need to just wrap up the presentation.
I think we need to let her in.
Okay. Is she? I don't know if she's even there, Chair. I'm not sure.
She's in attendees.
Okay, I can't see that.
One thing I would say while Dylan's doing that is the importance of this poll, because we've all seen a lot of different polls. The importance of this poll, the fact that people were asked not just about the tax or not just about the investment, because a lot of times you can ask about an investment and you get crazy high results, but to ask about them in tandem, the tax and the investment, I think and the fact that it happened 3 months into the pandemic at the end of June, I think gives you a higher degree of reliability of these results.
All right, is Melissa in?
Yes, I'm here. I will leave my video off just to prevent any backfeed on that. So Melissa Earlbaum, representing Safe Kids Coalition for Clackamas County, which is comprised of over 20 nonprofits, including agencies such as Clackamas Workforce, Safety Compass, Parrot Creek, Todos Untos, Children's Center, and more. And I just wanted to acknowledge the journey that we've all been on together in this last decade. For example, I was thinking today and about Commissioner Schrader being on the Clackamas Women's Services Board back in 2010 when we first conceptualized this initiative. And Chair Bernard has been on the commission since we started this effort in 2011, keeping it as a priority issue for us. And I know Commissioner Savas has sat through a lot of A Safe Place steering committee meetings where we've talked about the need for children's services. And there are many more examples of this work, and I wish I had time to discuss them all, but I will just leave you with those couple of comments and gratitude. Most recently, our coalition presented to the commission in May of 2019, giving a progress update, and worked with you all to request support for a poll to be conducted in November and December. In January, we began to work with PGA to develop that poll, but right as we began to do that and our outreach efforts to provide updates and share information about our progress, we were impacted by the pandemic. So our agencies have literally been on the front lines operationalizing our services during this time. And so I sincerely ask for your grace because I understand that this process is different than we typically expect due to that lost time. For over 10 years now, our request has been to give the residents an opportunity to support a children's safety levy that will assist trusted local nonprofits serving children and youth impacted by violence, neglect, and abuse through proven programs that promote healing and improve the well-being of children. Examples of these local services could include assessments and family support for child abuse and neglect, emergency shelter for trafficking victims, safety planning and legal advocacy, behavioral health therapy and addiction treatment, parenting support, and strengthening economic supports for families, as well as violence prevention programming that will reduce the incidence of violence in the community. The coalition believes that this fits squarely in the goals of the county's strategic priority to ensure safe, healthy, and secure communities. Perhaps now more than ever, we're called to look at reducing crime through community-driven strategies and ensure that children and youth have access to intervention services when they're physically distanced from more common systems. Despite the challenges in our timeline, we've acted swiftly in response to strong polling results. We've secured funding commitments to launch a campaign should we need to, and we've added a growing number of supporters and endorsers, including mayors, city council members, state representatives and senators, police chiefs, the current and incoming sheriff and incoming DA, school board members and superintendents, businesses, community-based nonprofits, and many survivors who are willing to share their story and with their courage. So I thank you for the time to just give you an update on where we've been at as a coalition.
Let's see, Paul. Paul?
My question is to Melissa, are we at liberty to talk about the documents, the four documents that are that we received from Gary Schmidt? Are we at liberty to talk about those?
Yeah, you can talk about them.
Okay. The reason I ask is because, and I just want to clarify right up front, big supporter of this. There's obviously has been a historical need for more service delivery in this area. It's always tragic when people are subjected to whether it's child abuse or domestic violence. And I've learned so much out of from all of you involved in this area. And I appreciate that. So I want to just put that up there up front. But the reason I asked the question about that is that Clackamas County is a big county, but it's a small world. And has all the members of all those agencies actually seen this? Because I'm under the understanding that some have not, at least some of the people that I know that I've talked to haven't seen the breakdown of this. And I tried to pull this up on my phone and didn't have a very good shot at it. So I wasn't able to really look at it in any detail until last evening. So do you have an answer for that, Melissa? Appreciate your help there.
Yeah, no problem. So we've been keeping our nonprofit partners across the coalition informed along the way, but as you know, there's been a lot of stops and starts in this process over the last decade. And so what we did was we took the feedback that they've been giving us throughout this time about the various needs and really wanted to make a framework that's expansive as possible. And so what you see in that document is a recommendation for the types of population that this levy would serve so that it could broadly support all of the various nonprofits that are a part of the coalition, as well as a pretty comprehensive list of examples of services that could be provided through a children's safety levy. And we believe that that provides a great opportunity for many, many providers across the county to participate and benefit from this fund to support children and families.
Yeah.
And yes, we have lost a little bit of time in the last couple of months due to the pandemic. And so we're having a lot of more detailed conversations right now, and we have for the last 2 months.
Okay, I guess what I was really asking was like on the page that has the breakdowns of the percentages of where the monies would go. I was just wondering, have the board members of all those nonprofits seen this?
Yeah, so the board members of many of the nonprofits, not every single one of them. And those are just a recommended starting point for conversation. One of the things that we were trying to accomplish with that, Commissioner Savas, was to make sure that there wasn't one specific type of agency that would get a majority of funding, that it would allow for the funding to go across multiple providers throughout the county. So we were thinking that was a sort of a more equitable framework, but it certainly doesn't have to be tied to that directly. We just wanted to ensure that it wasn't like a more prominent nonprofit getting the majority of the funds.
Yeah, I guess practically speaking, in order to kind of move forward on this, I would really like to, I think there's a limited timetable, and I'd really like to talk about, and we don't have the time today, but how, just looking at the Multnomah County model and how we turn it more into more of a grant model, and and fold it into our MFR as far as deliverables and making sure, and see if there's any opportunity for other agencies that are not nonprofits, such as whether it's even the county, for example, where we might have some resource needs and so forth, to be eligible for that and delivery of services. So how much money does this generate at the 15 cents per thousand?
$45 per $300,000 home.
No, I meant total. What's the estimated amount it would, on the tax base of Clackamas County, 15 cents would generate?
Sorry.
So as I understand it, and obviously I am not in your taxation department, but as I understand it from more recent conversations over the last 2 years, that's about $7 million a year. So we're not talking about a large amount of money. We really felt that we wanted to listen to voters to keep it small, narrow, and targeted. But all of your points are well taken, Commissioner Savas, and we're open to any of those discussions. We just really wanted to make sure that the services were providing core safety services for children.
Okay. I see Martha has her hand raised. I'm done for now. Thank you.
Martha, your mic.
I'm the liaison to the superintendents of Clackamas County, and they all know me, as you all know me, because I've worked with you folks for ages, and I taught in every probably school system in this county. What has been your direct outreach and communication with our school districts? Because they have been very interested in getting funding for an after-school programs, and they are actually oftentimes the first point of contact for a troubled child. So what have you done? Who have you contacted? What superintendents are on board with this at this point?
So thank you for that question. We are talking with all the superintendents. I know that we are behind the curve on this, Commissioner, and I really appreciate those comments. We understand that from what I understand, the superintendents had approached the county for some funding for after-school programming. We absolutely support and would work with them on that. We've been talking with the Oregon City superintendent, for example, North Clackamas, for example, and the school boards. And we're really just trying to conduct a lot of outreach now. Again, we've lost a couple of months in the process due to the pandemic. I believe that the programs that we're talking about with Children's Safety Levy Services do provide after-school programs for many of the school districts already and could expand in doing that. And certainly would partner with the schools on that effort for sure.
Okay. What's the position of the ESD at this point? You know? Education Service.
Sorry, what was it?
So
Yeah,
you don't
ESD?
have. Yeah, you don't have a position from them yet?
No, I don't have a position from them yet.
Okay, thank you for that. But I also had a couple of questions, if I can pull this up. When you talk, you know, I serve on Clackamas Workforce Partnership and I attend all their meetings. So when and how did you guys actually talk to them? Because one of the other things we've been looking at with workforce is daycare. But I don't recall them being part of the core team of this conversation. So, and I also want to know about the Clackamas County Children's Commission. I know Northwest Family Services has been involved. I guess Children of Incarcerated Parents is under the umbrella of Northwest Family Services. As you know, that was something I started and the county had to cut this year. We know the Children's Center, Parrot Creek. CASA, I know, is involved. You folks, Clackamas Women's Services. Have you done any work with NAMI, the Gladstone Center for Children and Families, Big Brothers, Big Sisters Northwest? Like I said, I've been on the CWP board, but I haven't, this has not come up in any of our conversations. And what about the early learning hub of Clackamas County and Protos Juntos? Are those all agencies that you directly contacted and that have been part of your intimate coalition conversations?
So thank you for that question, Commissioner. So yes, some of them, not all of them. Tutos Untos is a great example. We've been talking with Workforce Partnership. They meet with our executive director group for many months now. However, this wasn't designed necessarily to provide daycare, so I can see where there may be some disconnect there. But I also want to I just want to please remind you that you know, we've been doing this work for a number of years and having meetings, and then it was a stop and start based on other priorities in the county, whether that be the courthouse or other measures. So we've been kind of waiting for the next step of polling results, which we just got very recently. And now we're reaching back out to everybody that we've been talking to for the last several years and sharing with them our framework and getting feedback and collecting information for particularly the agencies across the county that provide those core safety services, and then an expanded circle as well. And just in the last couple of weeks here, we've had many more conversations, and I can't give you a list right now in this moment because I'm not the only one on our coalition that's talking with folks, but I'd be happy to provide you that after this meeting.
I'd like that, but the issue I'm hearing is the timeline is short. And unless you have done the community building with all these partnerships, I'm concerned about the opportunity for it to pass. And as much as I think the poll looked great, certainly I've had polls that have told me I was 10 points ahead and I've lost races. So in this particular time, I get very concerned about, you know, a poll is a poll is a poll. And I want to make sure that all the stakeholders are involved. The other thing that concerns me is, I think when we looked at the framework, it would go to what were perceived to be the anchor nonprofits directly, and they would subcontract. Now that's very, so I need to thank you, Dave, for, I know you're kind of going no, but that's kind of what I'm trying to understand, because if we as county commissioners are asking for public dollars, for example, we are responsible for how they're spent. So generally, we're the ones that would do something for it and subcontract ourselves rather than directly funneling it through a nonprofit. So I need some clarity on that. And frankly, the other concern I have is this was not noticed today as a levy discussion for a decision. This was just a conversation about what the, you know, what the polling showed. So that hasn't been noticed. So that's something else that we have to think about. So can you help me with any of that? As someone that—
Yes, I can.
Yeah.
So the concept is to do grants. So the concept would be, and again, these are things that we're open to expertise on from the county, but the concept that we've put forward is that the funding would go to Clackamas County, that there would be administrative costs built into that for county departments, and that it would fund grants to local community-based nonprofits to provide these services. And then instead of having nonprofits compete, that you would have collaborative setups. And so, for example, I'm going to use children's program, for example. Maybe they're receiving a grant to provide child abuse assessments and family supports, but then they could also include in their grant a subrecipient or an MOU with another nonprofit partner to maybe provide culturally specific services or some additional population specific services that they want to partner. So the idea was to try to get as many folks in on the collaboration as possible. And if that's not clear, we can certainly work on the language around that or the framework around that.
Well, I
but
think
it's designed to be
the framework is that's what the county does anyway. I mean, we do that already with DHS. We get the dollars. We do the art. We actually help funnel the dollars and build on those collaboratives. That's what our specialty is. So from my perspective, if the county is assuming we go forward, I frankly think the time's awfully short, to be honest. And I shouldn't even be discussing it because evidently that hasn't been noticed. But my concern is it has to be county driven with county appointees and county commissioners in control of that collaborative effort with all of our nonprofits. So to me, if we're going to do this and we're going to manage that, that is what our specialty is. That is what we do as a county. And those are the decisions we make every day as county commissioners. So I would also suggest you might want to look at that framework to clarify that. Because it's us putting it, if you had nonprofits, for example, and you wanted to do an initiative and you gathered signatures, that would be your framework. But if you're asking the commission as an entity that's responsible to the public for how the dollars are spent and has to do the contracting with how we manage it with our managing for results, how it fits into our larger framework of creating healthy communities, we are bound to provide that level of transparency to the public, and so that's where I think some more work needs to be done. And that's actually all I have to say, but I don't think we were here today to make a decision, but
Sonia. Okay, Sonia.
Thank you. Commissioner Schrader, I so appreciate all your diligent, thoughtful comments regarding the importance of coalition building, trusting government, making sure that we have all the ducks in a row. I think that's very, very important. The coalition's done a lot of work. They've done a lot of planning. They've built more of a base than we've ever had here in Clackamas County on this issue, which I think is amazing. I also think that the timing, given that we have budget constraints in Clackamas County, we have tremendous needs in Clackamas County, and especially with the COVID crisis, we have to look at ways to build resources. And 26-210, the homeless services measure was one way we did that. This is a tremendous opportunity that I don't think we could miss. And I would be interested if any other commissioner would also be interested in directing Gary to come back with us as soon as possible with what a referral would look like as far as the time frame, any emergency meetings that we would need to have, and ballot language. I know that that was proposed by the coalition, but we don't know exactly the details of the dollar ask as to what that would be raised in those ballot materials. And we could notice that and have a public discussion. And if anybody else would join me in that, I would sure like to make that motion.
Well, I will second that. This is Jim. But we've got Paul and Martha, so let's we'll discuss the desire to have Gary look into it. So Paul first, and then Martha.
Yeah, I'm happy to join in that Sonia, but I would, I think maybe reading into what Martha was saying, I want to make sure that no one's left out. And having a list of maybe all those providers, Melissa, that you had listed or verbalized would be great. But I think we make sure we got to be inclusive, and the time frame is so short. it does give me pause a little bit, but I would like to ask not just that we just look at the ballot language and what it takes to get it done, but also get some better definition around the structure and how the dollars travel through to get addressing a lot of the concerns that Martha raised. And the only thing that gave me a little bit of I just scratched my head on was the last page or last 2 pages of the document as far as the split of percentages. So if it's more grant-based and it's more about service provision, make sure that we're not leaving someone out there or a service out there or locking ourselves in. And so just as much flexibility, but at least put some structure in that ask. Sonia, are you okay with that?
Oh my gosh, I think I would figure this out by now, right? So I absolutely think we need to have all our ducks in a row. One of our strategic priorities is trust in government. We cannot compromise that. I have had the privilege and honor, along with Paul, to be at the Family Justice Center meetings, to be part of this conversation. I really believe that our coalition partners can deliver this for us. But if they can't, we are the electeds and we will make that call. We are simply asking today that Gary Schmidt look into this, give us a time frame, and make sure that we have what we need and that we would be comfortable if we so decided to refer this.
Well, I have to interject. We can't refer it today. It hasn't been noticed for a referral. That's why we can ask Mr. Madcore about that, to double check on that. This was largely informational. So we've got that piece of it. And the second piece of it, after someone who's worked on all these projects for years and has known intimately every stakeholder I've mentioned, as well as our superintendents in schools, it's going to be very important for me as commissioner that this is a community building exercise. This is not funneling dollars to particular folks, no matter how well the work is done. We're the ones on the line if we refer it, okay? So that's a very important piece to me. And I have not yet heard from, the only folks I've heard from the coalition are Clackamas Women's Services, the Children's Center, and that's it. I have not heard from anyone, nor have I ever been part of any of the more recent discussions, considering my long history here in this county. And the other issue I'm having is this. Polls show polls, but Commissioner Fisher, that measure, the Metro measure did not pass in Clackamas County. It lost by 52%. And I'm very worried that we're in a time during this county when any tax measure, despite polling, may really not go well. And if we have one shot at this, we have one shot at this. So my suggestion would be is to have staff, our staff, where I am not ready to make a decision today. So we can abstain. I won't make a decision when it hasn't been adequately noticed, number one. And number two, I would like to ask staff if they can come up with, maybe direct Gary to come up with a framework that works so that the county can be transparent and accountable as we work with all of our stakeholders for children.
So Martha, there is no effort today. There was no motion to put it on the ballot. The motion was to have Gary look into it. And I seconded that. Martha, your mic's off.
I can support having staff look at a framework, but I am going to remind everyone that as government officials, we are held to a high standard of transparency and accountability. Not that our nonprofits aren't, but in the end, if we're on track, if we're going to do cooperatives, this is what we specialize in. This is why we have a Department of Human Services to do so. And it's our duty to make sure that every single entity that works with children in this county gets an opportunity to access any dollars if we push anything forward.
Yep.
So with that, I'm done. Thank you.
Paul.
I just wanted to say, if there's absolutely a need for a motion, then I just want to amend the motion to include the structure, discussion on the structure, and also that the materials be posted immediately on the website. So if that's okay with the motion maker and the person who made the second, then I'm proceeded. I'm ready to vote.
Sure. Anybody else?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I had one issue. It's more of an operational one than because I echo Commissioner Schrader's concerns, but under provider requirements, the last bullet point states that with permission of the county's managing department, providers may develop a subrecipient agreement with a provider that may not meet the provider requirements. I'm uncomfortable with that, quite frankly. If the provider requirements say the money's going to stay here, it's a 501(c)(3) that is operating in Clackamas County, that is headquartered in Clackamas County, and this basically gives the opportunity to end around all the requirements, and I'm uncomfortable.
Yeah, and I just want to echo Commissioner Humberston's concerns. I know we had limited time, so I didn't want to get into a lot of the things that I have marked up, but I want to say I'm in agreement with that. I think that having the dollars go to places or nonprofits in Clackamas County is probably more important to me to make sure that the dollars go towards serving Clackamas County residents. I think that should be the imperative. That ought to be crystal clear. So there's a number of things. I just want to, under the umbrella of structure, be able to revisit this. I just consider this a draft and a proposal, but if there's flexibility in that, I'm supportive. But there has to be some flexibility, and we need to have a discussion with everyone. And we need to do it fast, obviously, because the timeline is pretty narrow. It's pretty tight.
Yeah, Martha.
Yes, and I would like to make sure that every board that I've mentioned sees the framework, if we're going to change it, that comes up with, and they are fully informed. And I would certainly expect letters of support from all of these entities, as well as our school system, in order to move forward. If you do not move this forward as a community effort, it will not pass. It will fail.
All right, so motion's on the table and a second. Christina, would you please poll us?
Yeah, Commissioner Fisher?
Aye.
Commissioner Savas?
Aye.
Commissioner Schrader? I think I saw an aye.
Okay.
It's aye with conditions.
Yeah.
And Commissioner Humbertson?
I echo Martha.
Okay, and Chair Bernard?
Aye, motion carries. Thank you, and got some work to do. All right, Gary, what's up next?
We're done, I think.
You are done for the day, Commissioner.
Oh, no.
Goodbye. I'm leaving.
All right, great. With that, we are adjourned.